Who would have thought? At 46 years old, I never imagined that I would be involved in an affair with a 21-year-old boy. I must admit that I consider myself an appetizing woman, but I had never noticed men younger than me before, let alone my friends' sons. Last summer, however, things got out of control. I have been married to William, the father of my children, for 20 years. We have a good relationship and live quietly in the city of Boston. He is not very passionate, if you know what I mean, but he has never turned down a proposal of intimacy. I must even admit that he has satisfied more than one of my whims. William is a conservative man. For him, intimacy in a couple should be something conventional, mainly for reproductive purposes or to satisfy basic needs. I, on the other hand, have a different view. I believe that nature has endowed us with bodies capable of experiencing pleasure so that we can enjoy them to the fullest. I always keep myself informed about new gadgets that appear on the market. I even enrolled in Tantra classes, as everything related to the subject interests me deeply. I'm not going to lie, I have had intimate encounters outside of my marriage in the past. I know William senses this, and has accepted me in spite of that, because he is aware that one man cannot satisfy me completely, not even him. So what do? Well, I consider myself an insatiable woman, and I'm not ashamed to admit it. Why should I? Intimacy is something completely natural, and there is nothing more exciting than a boy who is just beginning to discover the world of passion. And so it was with David, my best friend Jessica's son. Although he has come of age, the poor boy has been slow to mature, and I always tell Jessica that she should encourage him to take risks. However, she is too protective of him, which is why he is experiencing certain things too late. From my point of view, I am also a mother of a boy, so I totally understand Jessica's fears. However, in my case, I made sure to speak clearly to her from the beginning, not shying away from answering when she asked me how babies are made. I wanted to make sure she got the necessary information from the most reliable source she could turn to, her own mother. Admittedly, perhaps I should have been more restrained in certain respects, as William mentions. He considers me to be too liberal, but I prefer to stay true to myself. Just because I'm over 40 doesn't mean I should stop enjoying my body, as I did when I was young. Quite the contrary, I feel at my best now. But back to the main topic. I had an affair with my best friend's son. It turns out that the boy was about to start college in Boston next semester, and his mother had not yet found a place for him to stay. She wanted him to know the city beforehand, so he would know how to get around if he needed to. And this is where I come in. I had lived in Boston long enough to be her mentor and tour guide, so I was offering to welcome him into my home a couple of weeks before his classes started. David is an only child, and that explains why Jessica is so overprotective of him. At first, she was hesitant, but both he and I insisted enough to convince her. Don't get me wrong, when I offered my home to take David in, I had no hidden agenda. I just wanted to help him in the name of our strong friendship. Now, come to think of it, maybe David had other intentions at the time, though I didn't perceive them. But who could blame him? He was already in his 20s and had never been with a woman. Surely he was desperate to be free of his mother's overprotectiveness. It is important to mention that my son no longer lives with us, as he is on the college campus. Therefore, it is just William and I at home. However, for a couple of weeks, David would be joining us in our home. I don't currently work, as my husband is the breadwinner in our home, which gives me a lot of free time to devote to myself and show David the sights of the city. The boy settled in, and the first few days went by as normal. We would go out in the morning and walk around nearby places until sunset. Then we would come home and have dinner together. We would talk until bedtime, and the next day we would repeat the routine. But on the third day, something unexpected happened. Normally, I would take a shower when I got home, just before William arrived for dinner. David usually stayed in the living room, watching TV or playing on his phone. However, that day was different. I felt confident as I walked into the bathroom and didn't take the precaution of locking the door. I turned on the water in the shower and set my clothes aside. Then I stepped in and closed the curtain behind me. I was enjoying the feel of the warm water on my body when, through the curtain, I saw a silhouette. It was David, standing right in front of me, peeping at me. Instantly, I was shocked, but my astonishment increased when I looked down. He was clearly enjoying what he was seeing. As a reflex, he rested his hand on that area the moment he caught me looking at him, and I immediately looked away. "What are you doing here?" I said, covering my body with the shower curtain, even though it was transparent, and I knew he could get a pretty clear picture of me, albeit fogged by the steam. "Yeah, I was wondering if you could help me with this," he replied, holding it up so I knew what he meant. "Hey, this isn't a game. Wait for me outside," I told him. Although I consider myself a liberal woman and treat these issues as a matter of course, I couldn't believe what he was proposing. "I'm not playing. I'm serious. I want you to help me unload it, can you?" he said. I swallowed hard and opened the shower curtain, exposing myself completely. Then, I motioned for him to come closer, and he knelt down. He approached slowly, still looking into my eyes, and I let myself go. If I was going to do it, I would make sure to give the boy a good experience. When I laid him bare, I was surprised to see how he stood upright in front of my eyes. He was firm, and suddenly something inside me clicked. I knew he was an inexperienced boy, so I didn't have high expectations. By the time I got close, he was done. "I'm sorry," David said. "Don't worry about it," I replied as I slowly backed away and left everything as it was. I turned the water back on to take a second shower. "Don't worry, with practice you'll learn to control it," I assured him, not giving too much importance to what had just happened. "Would you teach me how to do it? There's a girl I like, and I'd like to make a good impression on our first time together. Please, I beg you," she said, her eyes shining like those of a sheep in distress. Even though I knew Jessica would never forgive me, I felt the need to sympathize with this boy. If I didn't help him, maybe he would end up somewhere dangerous without the care he needed, and that would be even worse. Even though I knew it wasn't the right thing to do, or the most conventional thing to do, I decided to be the one to teach him what was necessary. "Okay, but we'll do it my way," I told him, and he left the bathroom immediately, aware that William would be home any minute. Each day spent with David at our house became more interesting than the last. We decided to return earlier from our walks so that we would have enough alone time before William arrived. And without fail, each day I would go into his room to help him, like that time in the bathroom. It was a kind of pleasure training that we both enjoyed very much. To feed his newfound appetite, I would give him clear instructions on what to think about and how to hold out a little longer. My intention was for him to learn to dose his own delight and last long enough with any girl, or at least long enough for her to peak first. There is nothing more disappointing than a guy who can't satisfy his partner. And I had set out to help him in that regard. I'm not going to lie, playing the role of the mature expert teaching the young man eager to be with a woman was extremely exciting to me. I knew I was torturing him by making him wait to be intimate with me, but if I was going to take that risk, I had to make sure I could last long enough, or it wouldn't be worth it. All in all, this was a win-win relationship for both of us. He would learn how to be a man, and I would enjoy the experience and the thrill of teaching him and delighting in a boy full of youth and energy that I had been craving for a long time. By the end of his first week at home, I managed to get him to last about 5 minutes, but that wasn't long enough for an appetite like mine. So we increased the time of her workout, and I decided to increase the level of difficulty. At first, no additional inspiration was needed, but then I decided to supplement the experience with visual material to test what he was learning with me. The first 2 days, he tolerated very little, so we increased the sessions to twice a day. I would coach him before lunch, not only because I wanted to squeeze the most out of his potential, but also because the whole situation of being his intimate mentor turned me on much more than it did him. And every night, when William didn't want to satisfy me, I had to do it by myself, but thinking about David and making my fantasy with him come true. I hesitated a lot before I decided to do it, especially since Jessica called every day to find out what new place I had taken him to, which made me feel guilty. If she knew I was training her son in that regard, she would never forgive me. However, the desire to do it with him overwhelmed me. The first thing I taught him was the key points to give real satisfaction to a woman. I can't deny it. The guy was very driven, and by the third time, he managed to get me to the peak. Although I clearly had to guide him, that was the demonstration he needed to know he was ready. He already knew that I used to spend time with myself in the evenings, just before training him. And the last Friday he was home, he surprised me by walking into my room unannounced. That set off all the alarms, and I decided to give myself over to sin. In the end, he put me against the window and showed me everything he learned, like a true expert in the matter. Then he left, leaving me completely exhausted, happy, and satisfied. The following Sunday, David moved into an apartment near the university. Jessica never found out what we did, and from time to time he comes to visit.